officers. Attend. Present arms.
12 killed, 31 wounded in a massacre at Fort Hood. We have the name of the shooter, Malik Nidal Hasan. We're going to give you all the details here on the Savage Nation that you cannot get anywhere else. It's being covered up across the media landscape. U.S. Army Major Malik Nidal Hasan, identified as primary shooter at Fort Hood. Is the fact that he's allegedly a Muslim convert important? I will let America decide, not the government. The government is worthless. I will not let the media decide. They're worthless. I will let America decide on this program. And now a moment of silence for the fallen to this vermin. Ladies and gentlemen, we are covering a new tragedy, a new twist, which is an assassination, really a massacre at Fort Hood by the lowest of the low, a coward who pulls out a gun and shoots indiscriminately at unarmed individuals. This occurred, as you well know, in the last hour and a half at Fort Hood, which is unto itself a place that is filled with emotional carnage. It's the largest military base in America. It has lost more soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan than any other military base in the country. And after 8 years of constant deployments, everyone understands that the men at Fort Hood have a very high level of stress, even before last night's, and that is today's, shootings. The fact of the matter is, if you've been to Fort Hood, you know what it is. It is nothing but sort of an ugly conglomeration of tasteless restaurants, motels, shopping malls, low-rent housing, pawn shops, loan sharks, and a sense of transience. The strains of war are obvious everywhere. The 1st Cav and the 4th Infantry Divisions have already lost 685 men and women, ladies and gentlemen, because of the constant abuse by these two administrations. But the fact of the matter is, today brings it to a new level. This is a brand new level. The fact of the matter is, although it is estimated that about 15 to 30% of returning soldiers had psychological problems they call it post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injuries, the alleged shooter today, Malik Nidal Hasan, had not been to Iraq or Afghanistan. He was reportedly scheduled to deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan and apparently was unhappy about it. Again, the suspected gunman in the Fort Hood shooting has been identified. You will not read it in your local newspaper because his name is not John Smith. He is not blonde hair and blue-eyed. His name is Major Malik Nidal Hasan. The question to you is the fact that he's a Muslim convert important, yes or no? Let's cover that story. The fact of the matter is, it's a very important question, and I'm not going to bury it for political correctness reasons or for any other. Because if we don't wake up before it's too late, and for these men it's obviously too late already, if you don't wake up, you'll be next. We've been trying to warn you. We've been trying to warn you that there are cells across America. Now, of course, right away the FBI assured us that there was no terrorism involved. There's no question in my mind that they will not label this a terrorist incident because it was not conducted by Timothy McVeigh. It can only be a terrorist incident if it's Timothy McVeigh or someone who looks like he belongs to a white militia. But the fact of the matter is, if it looks like terrorism, if it walks like terrorism, if it acts like terrorism, and if there are dead people, well, then it is terrorism. The most embarrassing thing to have occurred today since this happened was the inept performance by our president, commander-in-chief, Barack Hussein Obama. When he went on the air about an hour ago, he was at some event with Indians talking about health care, and everyone in the country was waiting for him to say something about the shootings at Fort Hood. And our president looked more and more like an inept dolt. He looked just like Bush did after 9/11. Remember, Bush was ridiculed for sitting in the children's chair until someone said, Mr. President, planes have gone into the towers. Well, there was Barack Hussein Obama looking like Alfred E. Newman, going on and on, thanking everybody for the meeting at the Indian reservation, pushing his health care reform. And then he goes on again at the end of it, like an add-on, about what went on at Fort Hood without even knowing how many people were killed. You knew more from reading the websites than the president knew. All they want to do, all they're hard focused on, is turning this country into a socialist nightmare. But let's not go there today. Let's go here today. Let us go here today. Let's go to Fort Hood. I have a question for you. Have you heard anywhere that the shooter has been identified, the primary shooter, by the way? We still don't know who the other two shooters are. We haven't heard their names yet. But the suspected gunman in the Fort Hood shooting has been identified as Major Malik Nidal Hasan. He was killed, and two other suspects have been apprehended. They're unnamed thus far. There are unconfirmed reports that Major Hasan was a convert to Islam and originally from Virginia. According to BusinessInsider.com, he was reportedly scheduled to deploy to either Iraq or Afghanistan and was unhappy about it. So I don't want to hear about post-traumatic stress disorder from the liberals. They're going to tell you it's post-traumatic stress disorder. So far as we know, he never went over there. Let's go to the callers, 1-800-449-8255. By the way, I'm searching as hard as we can for more information. I turned the news on as I rushed into the radio station. There were no reports. They were reading scripts given to them this morning. I searched the television dials. I could hardly find anything about the shooting other than the generalities and about health care reform and global warming and this and that. But I couldn't find out who did it. All I wanted to know was who did the shooting. That's all I wanted to know. The first question in my mind is who did it. I must tell you, the minute I heard there was a massacre, all that was on my mind was who did it. That's all that was on my mind. Is that all that's on your mind? Or is there something wrong with me? Let me ask you liberals something. What was the first question on your mind when you heard there was a shooting at the base? What was the first question on your mind? Tell me what was the first question. I'd like to hear how liberals think. I'd like to know how diseased minds operate. Tell me what you first thought when you heard there was a shooting. Did you feel good? If your feeling was, hey, that's great, you're a sick person who belongs in a mental hospital. So I don't expect to hear from you. No doubt you're already working for the Department of Education. But let's say that you're not that sick, you're just a liberal. What was the first thought that went through your mind when you heard there was a massacre at Fort Hood? Please call the show and tell me. That's what I'd like to know. Tucson, Arizona, Eric, go ahead. What was on your mind today?
Michael, this incident is concrete proof that the executive branch has a conspiracy to undermine the military. When Janet Napolitano issued the statement saying to be warned of U.S. soldiers committing crimes, it's because they know there are people in the military capable of conducting things like this from the Islamic background. They just wanted something to say, I told you so, because they know it's going to happen and they know it's going to happen again. And
well, I don't think that's what she implied, but I don't know what she was thinking. I do know this. It's very strange, and of course, we're not saying there's any connection. It's absolutely impossible to be a connection. But the very day there's a Major League Tea Party protest in Washington, D.C. against Obamacare, the very same day Americans have had enough of this push towards Leninism, this happens. You understand this? Sacramento, Keith, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Dr. Dissident, I've waited so long to talk to you, man. This has been one of the hardest days of my life. I went to work all day long. I'm a welder. I build America. I built America today to get into my truck and hear on your show about fellow GIs getting killed. You know, what is going on around me, Savage? I'm a hardworking, simple American, and all I want to do is take care of my family and take care of my fellow Americans. And here I am. We need you, Savage. We really need you at times like
All right, you don't have to say any more, Keith. You better get off the line. I hear you. That's all I can say. There's nothing to be said to that call. It said it all. Yep, I need me too. Only sometimes I don't know where I am. I need me too. Only sometimes I don't know where I am. Again, we are talking about the massacre at Fort Hood. The massacre at Fort Hood, where one of the shooters has been identified as Major Malik Nidal Hasan, who was killed. The two other suspects have been apprehended and not named. According to Army spokesman, there are unconfirmed reports that Major Hasan was a convert to Islam. is the fact that he's a convert to Islam of any relevance at all? I'll be right back.
Savage.